party started. So I'm going to introduce these fellas because I want you guys to have context, okay? And I want you guys to hear what they do, where they're from, all that jazz, because we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. So first up, we have Suale Nunez, who is a polymath with a deep fascination for human creativity and an uncontrollable desire to innovate. A creative whose creativity takes shape in the form of technology, manifested through human-centered design. He has architect solutions and design products that coincide with many of his passions, including technology, fashion, and architecture. And he is the innovator of fashion's most recent innovation, the belt bar, an adaptable belt keeper and fashionable belt flat fix. Are you wearing this right now? Because I need to see what this is. Oh, that's so you could tie your thing. Oh, that is needed. That is needed. I love that. Okay. He founded Enoem, a creative and ideation consulting firm whose approach to innovation is holistic, with workshops and product design that are curated based on years of research, understanding human psychology, and studying the art of design. And its current focus is increasing awareness on how digital identity is being commoditized by online entities whose goals are to create a monopoly on user online data. So all that information you give in Facebook, TikTok, and all that jazz, he's trying to protect you out here, okay? And his company is focusing on that, and it is called Ionta. Thank you very much. All right, next up, we have Dr. Marlon Gray. He is the founder and managing partner at Empower You, an organization that provides therapeutic services for children and families affected by developmental disabilities and behavioral disorders. Empower You functions as a contractor for the state of New Jersey. Dr. Gray is a serial entrepreneur with investments in technology, real estate, and healthcare. Dr. Gray obtained his undergraduate degree in organizational leadership from Fordham University, his master's of science in management strategy and leadership at Michigan State University, and his doctor of education in organizational change and leadership from the University of South Carolina. And above all of these accomplishments, he is most proud of two things: being a dad and brother of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. All right, next up, we have Calixto Chinchilla, and that's his real name, is the founder and executive director, fly, right? Is the founder and executive director of the New York Latino Film Festival. The festival, yes, give it up. The festival has attracted more than 200,000 participants since its inception in 1999. The festival has premiered the work and supported careers of John Leguizamo, 50 Cent, Mark Anthony, Gina Rodriguez, Vin Diesel, Kerry Washington, and many, many more. He is one of the most influential Latino voices in the Latino film and entertainment industry, and in 2017, Calixto founded Futuro in partnership with Google, an initiative that connects digital thought leaders, social influencers, and brands through a series of programs. And in 2020, his latest baby, Calixto launched an agency, NYLFF, which is an award-winning and Emmy-nominated marketing agency that produces content and experiences that are vibrant, viral, and resonate. Shout out to Calixto. All right, last but certainly not least, my boy Troy Biggs, who is an experienced senior leader with a demonstrated history of working with C-level executives to facilitate the execution and delivery of complex projects and solutions. And trust me, y'all, they are complex. I have heard about them, and they, woo! He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Computer Science from New York University. After spending time post-degree in the fields of music, working for Jay-Z's Rockefeller Records, starting a nightlife marketing and promotions company with a college friend, and eventually staying true to his technology degree from NYU, in senior leadership roles working for companies like Goldman Sachs, HSBC, and Samsung, just to name a few. Troy, along with his brother, who is a Washington Redskins Super Bowl champion and leader in business management and alcohol distribution, they returned as entrepreneurs. And their latest venture, which is K Street Spirits, which launched in 2014 as a think lab for their beverage products, they released their Devil's Reef Cinnamon Spice Rum in 2018, and they have become one of the first African-American founders and creators of color in the spice rum category. Let's give it up for the fellas. Yes, I love the diversity here and also the expertise and all that jazz. So my first question is, what are initial thoughts after hearing the ladies?
Honest talk, we were all nervous even getting on these chairs.
They were. It took a lot
Not
of
to blow up
convincing,
spots.
okay?
But you know what? I mean, I think you women really set the tone for the conversation, which I appreciated, because when I think of gender wars, I was like, this is not Ukraine and Russia. I didn't know what I was stepping into. But I was, at least for me, I felt like you guys really gave honest dialogue, not only as women, but it's also how we think. And so for me, to your point, I've learned to be honest in having just real conversations about what I want. And I think there was a while that, yes, there's childhood development, just like a lot of other baggage that we carry that, not that you're not honest, but I think you're afraid of the judgment. And I think I've learned as I got older not to be afraid of having real conversation about this is what I want, this is who I am, this is where I'm at professionally, this is what it is, and this is what it ain't. And I think in the spaces that I work in, particularly for me, I've learned I don't want to be on all the time. You know what I mean? I'm only talking to you because you both women like really hit it on the target. Like, I don't want to be on all the time. I don't want to feel like I work in the business of show, and sometimes I don't want to be in the show all the time, right? But there's some people who want it. They have their own perception and they have their own things, and I've learned to really be honest about it. And also, I think I was telling to another woman here, it's like, as we kind of emerge in this post-pandemic or whatever we're at right now, I think all of us, men and women, have been able to have like real internal conversations about our mental health. Mm-hmm. And those are two words that never were connected, and those are two things we never were talking about, right? But particularly as men of color, people of color, how we operate in, and fit in those corporate white dominant spaces, right? Without feeling like we're imposters, or we're not feeling like we're not deserving, and all of that stuff kind of trickles down, whether you're male or female. And I think, I thank you again for both kind of setting the tone for that and for this, because I think we all kind of felt like a sigh of relief. Okay, Jen, this is not Vietnam, right?
And we got breakthroughs already, y'all. We got breakthroughs already.
So I appreciate it, and I thank all you women for listening.
I love it. So let's go into.
But wait, you want to hear from them?
Well, okay.
We might not have a whole lot of time to do that, but first things first, I got to say, before we stepped up here, my brother Rock On is in the back, and we have a blink twice if you need help agreement already, based on us coming up here. But I have to say, ladies, first things first, please give them a round of applause, because what they did was absolutely tremendous. And I think that as men coming up here, first and foremost, it disarmed us. And I think that's one of the things that we have to talk about, is this natural defense that we feel as though that we have to have, this wall that we have to have up. You literally disarmed us on the way up here, and I think made this conversation a lot easier. So thank you for that.
We did our job, Kara. But this is a great point, right, to hone in on, right? And I'm about the learnings right now, right? When you're about to have a difficult conversation, or have a conversation that men generally are not comfortable, like, when a man hears, we got talk, they like, oh, they might take longer to get home, right? They might sit in the car a little longer. So, right, this disarming language, right, is very important and a key takeaway. So thank you for bringing that up. All right, so let's get into some of these questions. So, Swale, you have a very interesting dynamic. So Swale is married, and he actually does a lot of business with his wife. And I wanted your perspective, because that's everybody talks about how they want to build an empire with someone, right? They always want kind of like their partner in crime, but when you're in it, is the grass really greener on that side, or like, how's that process go?
Well, thank you. One, for the platform, two, for the audience, and then three, just for the space that we can kind of talk from our perspective. Generally, when I'm in this type of room, when I see this many women, I kind of step to the back to kind of give women the space, because, like you said, in the environment we live in today, it's a male-dominant environment. So when opportunities for women to showcase women, I'm all for that. So this was amazing. So thank you for that. In regards to just life balancing with I've never called her an alpha female or alpha woman. But it's interesting because we each wear multiple hats within our dynamic. So she's my partner first. She's a mother to my children. She is a business owner, and she's and I emphasis on the owner because she's the one that runs the business, right? But first and foremost, she is woman and she is feminine. And it's a challenge sometimes watching that because she has to wear these multiple personalities throughout the day. And then for me, it's like I want to create a space where she feels comfortable enough to be herself, but also support her in every capacity, right? And it's honestly, it's a challenge because as recently as like 2 days ago, she was on a call and she had to turn on her assertiveness and she was demanding things. And then she got off the phone and then she demanded something of me. And I looked at her and I was like, well, the call is over. That's not how this works. And that I think that is and I think when you have to do all these things at the same time and you have to have all these different personalities, sometimes they cross over. And the challenge is identifying, like being able to kind of step out of those and identifying what role am I playing in this particular moment, and then how can I kind of be my best self in that moment. So, like I said, it is a challenge, but it's one that we agreed upon because when we got together, we were both goal-oriented. And then for me, it's like I've always been this driven, and I never needed somebody else to kind of drive me, right? But we had a goal in mind, and we both agreed on what that goal is. And then whenever there's a like conflict, it's always like, well, are we still working towards that goal? And if that is still the goal for both of us, then we're all on the same path. But the moment that goal changes, then we have to sit down and decide: do we still collectively want that thing? And if we still collectively want that thing, then we're on the same path. But if the route is changed, and we have to be of the understanding, like, hey, maybe this is not the path for us. So for us, it's always been, we're here because we want to be here, not because I'm forcing you to be here, you are forcing me to be here. But I said a lot, so.
No, I appreciate that context because it is hard, right? It is hard. It's hard for two alphas to be together. It's hard for two people who are about that life, super ambitious, aggressive, go-getters, trying to create a legacy, trying to amass big things, and then to come home and turn that all off to be intimate, right? And to connect on that level. So, Troy, I want to pass this over to you because there was a question you submitted when we were prepping for this conversation that I thought was really interesting, and it was, do we as alphas really know what we want in a partner? Do we really know what we desire, or are we really looking for an assistant? So let's elaborate on that.
Well, I'll tell you where that comes from, right? So, as you get older, right, you realize that there's certain things that you prioritize in your relationships. When I was younger, my mother always told me, she said, well, let me make the caveat. My mother was the head of household. She made more money than my father. She balanced the books. She took care of my tuition. She was the person that I would go to for advice. So, the days of college doing this complex degree, I started off doing a double degree, and I ended up having one degree because I didn't want to do it anymore. And she kind of forced me and pushed me to finish. So that question came from at one point in my life when I was in the streets, right? She was like, you either need a wife or a secretary, right? That was her, because I would always call her and I'd be like, hey, I got this form from Goldman. It says this. I need you to read it for me and decipher what it says and give it back to me. And so as I got older, I think I realized that prioritization for me was really in the friendship role. I've learned over time that the relationships that I want to foster and I want to feed are ones that provide me with what I provide them, right? And so, positive influence, all the characteristics that you hope that you receive when you step out of the door, I've just made it a point to just lead with that all the time. Like, I never want to send a representative or go through that phase of learning. I feel like if you're honest from the jump, then you have somewhere to start. But I think also that, again, there is complexity there, but it's manageable, right? As long as you're honest from day one. Right, I think the ladies had a good point about, I've been in those rooms where people come to me and they're like, hey, how you doing? And they do one of these, right? Like, it happens all the time in corporate business. You'd be shocked, right? Like, from women, right? Like, hey, how are you? Ooh, you got big arms. Like, and I'm like, okay, so this is where we're starting the conversation on, your strategy roadmap for, X bank, right? Fine. We all can play that game. But I think, when you understand, where you stand and what it is that you want out of each relationship, then you prioritize that first. Whether that's business, whether that's personal, you make it a point to prioritize that up front, and that makes it a lot easier to decipher what it is that you require in a partner.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I think women have to ask themselves that question as well. Like, what is it that you really want, girl? Like, do you want a protector, or do you want someone who can emotionally protect you? Do you want someone who can physically protect you? Do you want someone who can pay your bills, or do you want someone who can emotionally support you, right? And really getting clarity and sitting down and doing the assessment, because a lot of us are just taking what we see on TikTok and Instagram and making it our own, and then going on a date and saying, yeah, well, you got a house? You own where you live? Oh, okay. How many kids you got, right? And instead of really writing down what is unique and true for you, right? So, Calixto, when we were having our prep conversation, you mentioned this term that I was like, whoa, we need to definitely talk about this. And it was the way that perhaps women and even men sometimes to each other, how they unconsciously emasculate the man.
Yeah, well, that was a made-up word, but yeah.
I love that word. It was unconscious emasculation. And I think women, because we're so go, 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 especially if, we're kind of doing our thing and we're running our careers, it's hard for us to turn off. And so when we get home, right, we might be emasculating you not intentionally, right? It's unconscious. So can you elaborate on that?
I'm trying to remember the concept because we did it as a group of the guys, and we were just like vibing. So like, is it?
I know it was a vibe. It was a vibe.
But yeah, but it was the concept of that. But yeah, like, do we do things and not realize that we're doing them? I think to his point, you know what I mean. And I think that, yeah, I think men and women, I think we both unconsciously emasculate each other when we're not giving each other the credit, or like, I don't know. I think it's like, if I'm not capable of doing something, however you respond to that, I think kind of like that could be unconscious.
Let me help you out.
Yes.
So why don't each of you tell us or give us an example of when you felt emasculated by a woman? No, because we need the examples, right? We need the examples so that we know, is it something we said? Is it how we showed up?
Sometimes it's how you say it.
Yeah, okay. Let's go. Let's give examples.
Yeah, I was going to say it's all in how you say something, not really what you say. I had a relationship where the woman that I was dealing with was, what's the best way to term it? She didn't see the forest through the trees. That's kind of a terminology that I use, right? The type of business that I'm in, it revolves around strategy and kind of being able to look forward and see things before they happen. And so her gut reaction to me not doing something or me not being at a bar selling my brand was that you're not out and you're not working. And my response would always be, I hate that you think that because I'm not doing things the way that you would do them, that I'm not actually doing something that's in line with where my brand wants to go. And that for me, it wasn't necessarily emasculating, so to speak, but the idea that she thought I didn't have it all together. And I was like, I came here with it all together in the beginning. I'm actually helping you run your business, and I'm giving you resources to do X, Y, and Z, but you're acting like I don't do that for myself because you don't see me doing certain things. So, and in the alcohol industry, I had that conversation before I came. It's one of those things where I don't look at my business like, not to knock, like a Hennessy or a Douce or one of those brands. When I have conversations with distributors and companies that may want to come and take us public, I'm like, show me soju, show me Imperador brandy, which most people don't know what it is. But if you're in the industry, you know that soju is the number one selling brand of alcohol in the world for the last 5 to 6 years running. Imperador brandy is the second. Nobody's probably going to the store and bought soju or Imperador brandy. So when you talk to me as if you're talking to the guy that wants to be soju, not the guy that wants to be Remy, right? And that's the thing that I think, when you look at color and you look at, what we do and who we are. That's the thing that's very difficult for founders of color, because they always want to put you in that box as a brand of color, right? I don't, selfishly, I don't want you to know that my brand is made by a black man. I want you to just know that it's good and you buy it, right? So I'm rather of let the numbers speak, let the quality of the product speak, not so much I've got to find a rapper or an influencer to champion my brand, because the big brands that are really big brands that are selling just don't do that.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. Marlon, do you have an example that you'd like to share?
I don't know if it's an actual, like, example. It's more like the culture of a relationship type of thing. There's a song that, one of my favorite artists, he's not really a well-known artist. He does a lot of reference tracks for people, really. That's more his thing. But he had this song called She Couldn't Hear Me Over the Music. And that was kind of like, the culture of our relationship. But it took me a while to actually see it, right? Like, she couldn't hear me over the music, didn't really know my song. It was all about her show. And I was always there to be very supportive and everything else like that. But what I didn't realize is that my partner was not really being my partner, holding herself to the same standard she was holding me. Right. And I think that became where I realized that in that process, I was feeling increasingly emasculated, like I didn't have a voice in that particular relationship, because whatever she said went. And I was actually cool with that to a degree, right up until the point where I broke off the engagement. And I said, I can't do this for the rest of my life. Right. And so it is what it is.
I had a friend that went through the same thing. Swale's like, no.
So Swale, I want to switch it up, because
Thank you.
I think we got some good examples. I want to talk about, like, how do you turn off? Like, how do you advise your wife? Like you said, there was a situation where, she was on the phone and she was, getting it, and then she kind of gave you that same energy. So, like, how would you advise women to kind of switch up the energy when they're doing their work thing versus when they're at home?
So, and I know it was brought up in the earlier panel. I'm a huge fan of energy, female energy, just femininity in general. If you ask me what I love most about my lady, I'll tell you her femininity. It's like, she oozes it. It's like...
Give me an example of what that looks like.
I can tell you what it feels like. What?
Sir.
No.
What does it look like?
I don't know how to describe it. So when I was I know Troy mentioned, but running in the streets. When I was a single guy, I've always been a fan of moments, but I would always want female energy around me. I couldn't describe it. It wasn't a sexual attraction. It wasn't like you could be next to me and me not sexually attracted to you. But your femininity, I could feel it. And I'm a creative, right? And that's how I get inspiration. So you don't necessarily have to look a certain way, but if you embrace your femininity, it's inspiring to me. And it's so motivating. Like, I could solve any problem in the world with the right woman next to me. It's not a sexual attraction per se. It's a femininity thing. So I'm saying all that to say this. It's like I advocated for my lady to be more assertive, to own her bossness.
Masculine energy.
I don't want to call it that, because I think a woman can be boss-like, could be command attention and all that, but still maintain her femininity. And it's weird because when she's in that moment, it turns me on. Like literally, I want her to keep that energy, because it just amplifies everything else around her. So for me, it's like, it's not necessarily turning it off. It's just kind of embracing it and honing it. But I always try to tell her, please don't ever lose your femininity. It's like, and that is not just one thing. It's the emotional side of being a woman.
I need an example.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I don't know what.
Is it something she does around the house? Is it how she wears her hair? Is it her tone?
Her movements. how
Not
she,
in the bedroom. I'm talking about outside.
Specifically, like her movements, like how something as simple as how she flicks her hair, how she like picks up a drink to drink it. Like it's so, I don't want to say it's dainty, but I don't know. I watch it and it's like, I don't know how else to, I can't describe it, but you can just tell, like it just oozes femininity to me.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not doing a good job of explaining.
Okay, listen. Love is love up in here. Okay. So I got a question for Marlon. Since we're talking about, women owning their femininity, let's talk about women taking accountability. What does that look like?
Oh, you just set me all the way up. All right, so I want to speak from this lens first and foremost. Like, I know this is gender wars and alpha male and alpha female, and I think that Troy actually said something that I love. I'm an entrepreneur, right? I don't want to just be a good black entrepreneur. I'm a good entrepreneur. I just happen to be black, right? When I look at relationships, right, it's not like, oh, she did that well for a girl, or he does that well for a guy. Like, we have to, like, challenge some of our perceptions of what should be, right? So when I talked about breaking off that engagement, with a partner that was not holding herself to the same standard I was being held to, that's where I felt like my own need for an actual partner was actually not being met, because I hold myself to the standard that I expect from my partner. I believe it was Kara that might have said that, that energy that you put out, you want to receive that energy back, right? So I had to ask myself, how do I want to show up in a relationship, right? What have I done wrong that may have impacted how an outcome came about, whatever the case may be? And I actually have to have a hard conversation first and foremost with myself. I got to stand in the mirror, and I have to do that. That's very, very hard to do. And so a partner for me is not a person who is scared to have that conversation with self and explore, different ways that they may have shown up that might have impacted a particular situation. For instance, I have a rule in my house. I grew up in a home where yelling and screaming and banging doors was normal, right? I did not like it. Being a young child in that home did not make me feel safe and secure. In my home now, we do not yell, point blank, period. You're not going to hear me call you out your name. You're not going to hear me scream. You're not going to hear any of that stuff. If I scream, the house is probably on fire, and I probably said it there, right? Like, that's it. But, like, if you come at me super strong with the screaming and the cursing and the name calling now, you're not hitting me at the same standard that I'm holding myself to, and now it's a problem, right? And so when you do that and I allow it, I'm giving you license to continue that, right? And especially when you're not being accountable and saying, hey, listen, you know what? I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. Hey, had a rough day at work, blah, 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 blah. When you don't acknowledge it even, and you just want to, like, keep on moving like it's all cool, it's like, you step on somebody's shoe, you say you're sorry, right? You don't step on somebody's shoes and brand new shoes and just keep on moving. But, like, some people do that in relationships. They literally shit on you and just keep on moving like it's nothing. And if it's not cool for guys, I don't think it's cool for ladies either. I don't think it's cool for anybody.
All right. So we're learning a few things. We're learning about holding ourselves accountable, admitting to when we do something that we know is disrespectful to our partner, and the acknowledgement of it goes a long way, right? And how that strengthens our relationships. And this is also in the workplace. Like, if you play yourself at work, right? Also calling them in, like, hey, listen, I had a crazy-ass morning. It was not meant for you. That was not the energy for you. I just want to apologize, right? And having that emotional maturity, right, that we seek out so much in other people, and making sure that we show up in that same light. So I want to go back to Calypso, because another amazing term you came up with. This is why I take notes, y'all. You had mentioned mama's boy syndrome. And and how that shows up, right? How that shows up. How that shows up at work and how that shows up at home.
I said all that. Okay.
You did. So let's dive deep into it. Mama boy syndrome. Let's go.
I'm not a mama's boy, though. My brother is, but not me.
Okay. You got to make that clear.
Even though I'm the youngest, but I'm not. I don't know. Because this was all a conversation. I forgot. Go ahead.
Calypso.
Because I'm not a mama's boy. But I forgot. But you know what? Because somebody else had an experience, and we talked about mama's boy syndrome, which is a real thing.
Yes,
some
we
women
did talk
feel
about
like
it. Yes.
men is being, pampered, and they get what they want, and they want, sometimes they want their women to kind of be
so here
like
we go.
others,
I'm going to flip the script on you now.
Bring it.
So, to Troy's point about do alpha partners really know what they want on each other, right? Do men really want, like they say,
You know
don't,
what?
espérate.
Okay.
They say,
Because I remember the concept.
hold on one second.
Now I remember.
Oh, now you remember?
I think the thing is that it's interesting because, like you, I was raised in a single household. My mom was the dominant. My mom is very alpha. And so that's the thing, is like how she instilled that in her boys without necessarily keeping us mama's boys. But yeah, when you talk about alpha, my mom was really about, you guys are going to be men. And she was, and I think at one point growing up, that was difficult for me. Like I resented my mom for a while. And there was other things, my brother's like 10 years older, so he was rough around the edges, but I always thought she was closest to him, I guess because he came to her life at a certain time, right? Different than me. But either way, I think the thing is I think we were talking about how alpha women can be and how they impact their children. And even to this day, I think I was talking about, like, my mom is still tough on me. Like, I could give her an accomplishment, and it's worse that sometimes she doesn't always get it just because of just cultural barriers. Like, she's like, okay, you got this or whatever. But then sometimes she'll throw something, it's how it's said, well, there's other competition, or this, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to win, or whatever it is, right? And so I think we were talking about, I think in a context of, like, how we grow up impacts us as men, and all of those things. Like, for me, I could be alpha. I've heard I am, and I could be competitive, and I'm definitely strategic. I'm all those things, but I'm also, I think, not afraid of being vulnerable and kind of admitting to that. And I'm also learning in my relationships, when you talk about turning off, I also am learning to be more cognizant, both in my relationship, in every relationship, of what I'm saying. Because sometimes I am a Virgo, but I could be really just blunt, and I got to be careful with that. Because as good intentions as I have, to have your back and say, yo, don't do this or whatever, and as strategic as I can be, and I want you to be that, I've learned to be careful and watch my words, because what my intentions are and how they come out are two different things. You know what I mean? And so, and it shouldn't be just because you're my boy, you know me, I could talk to you like cualquiera. Like, it shouldn't be like that. Yeah. But I've learned to, like, really be conscious and, like, know sometimes you have that intuition. If you're not going to say it right, don't say it at all. And so I'm learning to listen to that voice a little bit more deeper. It's like, okay, let me pull back.
I want to say this. They always talk about women are generally more emotional than men. But men generally have really high emotional IQ. What you just mentioned is emotional IQ, being cognizant of the fact that I'm self-aware and I'm also relationship aware, and I'm aware that I have to manage this relationship, so I'm going to not say certain things. That is emotional intelligence. And I don't think men get too much credit for that, because when we hear the term emotional intelligence, we first think of emotion, and we always say men aren't emotional. And that's two different things. But that is a conscious thought. And then to add to that, one thing I realized just in relationships with me, and not only women in general, human beings, and this is the psychology of it, we generally don't want to fix our problems. We're just looking for people who are going to allow us to kind of let that be. Like, we don't want to fix it, just accept it and almost like condone it. And we go searching for those people who are going to condone our bad behaviors. And I think if we're conscious in the fact that, are we, one, looking to better ourselves, and two, being a fruitful relationship, then there's a lot of self-reflection and self-awareness that needs to happen for that to happen. And I think a lot of us don't want to allow that, and that's why we're in certain situations. And that's a never-ending growth as human beings, right? It's not when you find that person, it's still an ongoing thing. So we're all work in progress, but That's just a thought I had about it.
And you know what? Sometimes, and you talked about like physique. Sometimes the bigger you are, the more you have to kind of pull back so you're not intimidating. And I've had that a lot. Like you talk about body language. It's not our fault that we're built the way we are, but you also sometimes have to realize I got to pull back because I don't want you to think something I'm not. I don't want you to think I'm threatening, or if I argue or if I debate with you that I'm about, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you've experienced that. But I've experienced that. I kind of have to tone myself down, but this is how I am, you know?
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Ooh, this is really good. You should know about this. So I don't know about you, but I've been known to procrastinate, especially when things scare the hell out of me. The fear alone would have me stuck, overwhelmed, confused, and all types of self-doubt. And don't even get me started on the imposter syndrome. Okay. After getting laid off, not once, but 3 times, honey, I realized that the security blanket that I made up in my head was just an excuse because I didn't really want to bet on myself. The corporate benefits that had me in that headlock, girl, they went out the window once my job decided that they no longer needed me.
Turns out that I'll save a whole nickel if I cut your salary completely.
The truth is, the only security blanket guarantee is the one that you create for yourself. In other words, until you start a business, you will always be at the mercy of a company's headcount, and you will never have complete control over your time, which means you'll be renting out your thought leadership and helping build someone else's dream instead of your own. If you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Don't you think it's time you stop playing small and tap all the way into your power, sis? Click on the link above or below this video to learn my 3-step process, the exact 3 steps that I took to make the transition from corporate to entrepreneurship. And this is helpful even if you don't know what type of business to start and have only one source of income. And this is absolutely free. It is my gift to you. I want you to win. It's winning season. In fact, what's that? It smells like winning season. Okay, so tap in and I'll see you inside the training. Let's go. So I appreciate these perspectives, but I want to circle back to the mama's boy syndrome because
I gave you all I got.
I saw what y'all were doing here, but no. Only because, and it speaks to your point, Calixto, about a different generation of women have raised our men of today, right? And I think that's a big reason why men of today, right, modern men, are struggling with, okay, I was raised this way, and I was preconditioned to believe these values, and I've taken on these values because I'm carrying them through my childhood. But wait, now I'm in this new world, and they're telling me I need to be, less aggressive. I need to be more emotional, or whatever it is. And I find that is very difficult, right? And I also have seen and have heard and experienced that men say, they'll be like, stop talking to me like you're my mother. Or, you're not my mother. But they want to be coddled like their mother did, right? So talk to us a little bit. And this is about education, right? This is about us trying to understand the male psyche, because it's also hard for women to, show up and figure out what is it that you want, right? So talk to us about that.
So what I'll say is it's a scholastic discussion, right?
Oh, wow. Not scholastic.
No, hear me out. It's a scholastic it's a scholastic discussion because that term, it really, in our community, it's the the father that's not there, right? So, you take that, alpha male, alpha female energy, and, your mother has to be both, right? She's got to take you to football practice. She's got to check your homework. She's got to show you how to change the oil in your car. There's a loss there, right? Typically, when we were growing up, there was no internet and no computers, right? So, the only thing you had to do was go get a dictionary and encyclopedia, and that wasn't enough, right? In today's age, it's a little bit different, which is why I think you see mental health kind of coming to the forefront and men going and not being afraid to go seek help and understand where these traumas and these things come from, because that's trauma that was put on your mother by the man who left, and she is in turn trying to make you not him, right? So that mama's boy syndrome is just that. So, I used to say, I can pick out somebody with a single parent in any room, right? Because just how I had both my parents. I had my mother and my father. Just the roles were a little bit reversed. My father was very good with his hands, but he only had up to like a 6th grade education, right? He grew up in the South. He never went to college. He never had the opportunity. My mother, on the other hand, she also grew up in the South, but she went to college. She went to Catholic school, so she put my brother and I in Catholic school. I had that discussion with her today. The dynamic that comes from that is not something that is widely known in our community, because the facets that allow us to have a dual-parent home, you can almost say strategically weren't there. So, you only learn by looking at your neighbor who takes care of their kid in a certain way in the project next door to you, or the home next door to you. And so I say it's scholastic because there is that unlearning that has to happen, right? Your mother might have had only her mother, who only had her mother, and that's a legacy of just, trauma and thought process that has there's no real, scale to it. Right. And so I think when you look at that, kind of mama's boy term, you have to really look at where it stems from. Right. There's a ton of studies that go back to, the early 80s and the crack epidemic and, the mass incarceration and all those things. But those things are really true. And I shouldn't say it's more seen via programming in our culture. But, you take, for lack of better terminology, I'll say Eminem. Right. White boy from Detroit. Right, but if you look at Detroit and you look at 8 Mile and you look at the sector and the places where it was, that trailer park home kind of mentality is the same thing, right? And it was strategic in the way that it was done, and so that's where you get that imbalance. I don't want to say imbalance, that imbalance of or lack of certain aspects of just being a person. You don't have it; it's not there, so you make do with what you have. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to. No, sorry. Where are we going to go?
Go ahead. Oh,
okay.
You have a response?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. The mama's boy thing can happen for sure, but it's not just the single parent homes. The dual parent homes. Sometimes the challenges in the dual parent home might affect the way that we show up in relationships too. Right. A lot of the alpha females, if we're going to go back with this term, the alpha females that I've dealt with, literally had a mother who dealt with so much that either the mom taught them how not to be a certain way, and you're going to be this lioness because I couldn't be, or they laid the platform for them and they said, okay, I will never need a dude, period, right? So this happens on both sides. You have to kind of take a look at the person's entire history, and to your point, it is the home, it is the school, it is the community experiences, and all those things that add up to how we develop and how we actually understand each other and can communicate with our partners so they can actually empathize with us and have that emotional intelligence that you're talking about to understand where we're coming from when we're coming at them a certain way.
I mean, I would add outside of all of that,
Okay.
there are a sector of guys who are like, spoiled brats, right? So there's a sector of kids who are spoiled brats.
There are women like that too, though.
Yeah.
I have highly effective female friends who have amazing corporate jobs.
Talking to the mic.
Lionesses, like amazing corporate jobs, but they're like, oh, I can't find a man. Like, my dad always changed my oil, and he always made sure I had this, and he always did that. And I said, listen, she's easily making, $200,000+ a year, doing extremely well by many measures, but what she's looking for is like the guy that is at her level or beyond and does all the things her daddy did too, right? So it does go both ways.
So I'll say it from a different perspective. So I was raised by my mother, and I have 2 older brothers, and we are like men, like boys. We fought. We had like everything that a young boy would problem or issues a young boy would have. We had it amongst each other with women and all these things. But one thing I learned, none of the things that my mother provided me, I wanted from my partner. My mother taught me how to be an independent man, how to cook, how to clean, how to do all these things. So I learned how to do that really well, that I didn't need it from a woman. Now what became interesting is my mom did all these things, and then she would see the women that her sons would end up with, and they're doing half the things that she did. And she feels some type of way about it because she wanted us to maintain this for the woman to maintain what she did. But what she didn't realize in turn, she made us into these independent men that we didn't need those things. So it's a challenge now when I watch the dynamic that she has with the relationship with her son's partners, because not knowing that she had so much influence on that being the case. Like, you cannot starve me. Like, I know how to cook. Like, so I'm not threatened by that. Like, that'll never threaten me. And then my mom, you think I learned this from my dad. My mom said, if anything happens in your house, son, it's your responsibility to fix it, because you don't want another man to come into your house and fix that, and then your wife sees that, and then sees the man in him that you're not. So I would break things. I would break things before I call somebody else to come.
Oh my goodness, men. Okay. All right. So we're going to wrap up in a minute or two. I wanted to ask about, a lot of men tend to struggle, and correct me if I'm wrong, tend to struggle from coming back after they've experienced a difficult relationship, right? They kind of carry the emotional baggage, and they're jaded, whereas women, I find, tend to recover quicker, or in a different way where they're willing to still be open and receive certain things in. So I want to ask Marlon, how can women support men who have been jaded or hurt in past relationships and are going through the process? Like, how can women show up for men in that way?
Okay, men have feelings too, period. We have feelings too. And so hurt people. People should definitely look inward before they start going out there. So I think first things first, you should try to see if your partner is even potentially in that space where they might need a little healing that you really can't provide. Because I've seen a lot of female friends of mine get trapped in those types of situations where they're not dealing with a person who's really coming to them with a full presenting deck. And that's almost an energy drain, right? That's almost an energy drain over time. So that's one thing. But, I think everybody goes through things. I think the things that happen to you don't define you. It's how you rebound from that does. It speaks to your character, your resiliency. I'm not jaded, by the way. Just I just But I think that we have to kind of know the markers, to be honest with you. Like, sometimes you just need to know when somebody's just simply not ready for a relationship. Like, they present with so many amazing things. Like, okay, like I said, I try to do or be what I want in a relationship. Active, attractive is just relative to whatever you think, right? Active, attractive, ambitious, but also emotionally intelligent. Do you have all of those things at base? It's not a really tall order, but it kind of is. And if you don't have those things to a moderate level, or at least are working on them, I have to be cool with saying, hey, listen, this was nice, but this ain't for me. This ain't it, right? So I don't think it's really a matter of dealing with a jaded person. I think it's a matter of being able to just identify that and then figure out how much of that battle you're really willing to take on, to be honest with you.
Okay. I want to end things with some final thoughts on each of you work with a lot of amazing women. Each of you have a lot of amazing women in your life. And each of you also deal with the shits. So I would love for you to, as a final thought, what piece of advice do you have for women who are seeking out a partner or who are currently experiencing obstacles with their partner, given what you know as being a modern man? What would be your one piece of advice?
No pressure. I think I said it before. I think friendship and communication skills are really important. I guess I learned shorter of a time ago than longer a time ago that I would much rather have someone who's completely transparent with me and is focused on my well-being and is going to, tell me when I'm, being a shit versus just let me go ahead and do it, right? Because I did spend some time in the streets, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. So some of those habits, right? You turn off, like So you want somebody who's honest. I mean, at least for me, and I think for women as well. You want somebody who's going to be honest and who's going to be an advocate. You want somebody who's going to, want to nurture and protect, even if you don't need it. And you want someone who is going to continually keep you on the top of your game, right? In any way, shape, or form. I think my Achilles heel is I feel like I have to make my partners tough enough that no one else breaks them, right? So yeah, man. So I think the protector in me never wants to see my lady cry or be in a situation where someone intimidates her and makes her feel less than who she is. So I kind of enter that relationship saying, if I'm going to be with you, you have to know that I hold you way up here, probably higher than I hold myself, and I'm just trying to get you to see it. And so, with that comes, I don't want to call it a pressure, but it's like this thing to never be satisfied, right? Like, I learned, like, comfortable is the enemy, right? Never get comfortable because, that's something that you just don't want to be. So I'm always, kind of like Swale, that's why we get along so well. We're always looking for the next thing. But again, just ensuring that, they're aware that, I am their backbone, if you want to call it that, right? Or I'm the person they're going to lean on, but they shouldn't need me. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Weird, but I remember I dated someone and I told her, I was like, if I was to die tomorrow, you should be okay. Right? Like,
you got that paperwork right?
Not just that, but just no. I mean, it's a full thing, right? Not just that, but just you have all the faculties and all the capabilities to do better than what I've done, even as me, right? So you shouldn't be afraid of me not being here because you can handle it all, and that's why I chose you, right? Right. So I think it's a little bit selfish, right? Because that's not something that you ever wish on a partner or somebody that you love and care about. But I always feel like, just be prepared to take on the world. Because I think that's how I was taught by my parents. It's like, don't let anybody break you. Don't let someone who can't do something tell you that you can't do it because they're too afraid to try or too afraid to do it. So I've always kind of looked at my relationships, I guess, candidly in that fashion. That makes sense.
Calixto, 30 seconds.
No, to be brief, I mean, a lot of it's to his point. I mean, I've learned to slow it down. Like we could take our time, get to know each other. I don't think, I think there was a moment where.
Why all men want to slow down? Like, why they want to work
but some women want it fast.
They want to work like, for like, we're not children.
So my theory is like, we don't need there's no 200, we don't have to race a 200 pass goal. Like, we could take our sweet time, get to know each other. I think it's also what I've learned is really important is the relationship. I've realized relationships are really 3 relationships in one. There's a relationship I have with myself. There's a relationship you have with yourself. And whatever this is, those are 3 different separate relationships. That relationship is something else. And all of those things are singular, right? All of those things are really important. And I've learned that over time. I've learned to be honest. I've learned, again, to say what I need to be in a supportive environment. So being in and out for whatever, I want to compliment you just as much as I want to feel like I'm getting my props, whatever. I want to feel like we're there for each other. Mm-hmm. I've been in relationships where it's one more than the other, and I don't like that feeling, And so,
so your advice is to take your time.
Take your time.
Okay.
That's it. I have some other stuff, but you took the words out of my mouth. Yeah.
Marlon, final thoughts? Advice?
Yeah, inner peace really starts with self, first and foremost, so don't lean on any relationship for that, right? I think that, again, to that same point, hold your partner to the same standard you hold yourself. So if you have to have that inner peace established, look for somebody who also is at least working on theirs or has theirs established as well. And after that, I think it's all even down the middle. I think to Kara's point, I really don't care what my partner makes. Like, that doesn't bother me. If they have the core components of kind of what I look for, they understand my hustle and really don't try to slow me down. But I also have to be knowledgeable about my own bullshit, right? Like, you need to make sure that you're making time. You're at dinner now. Put the phone down. Like, schedule a date night. Take her on a trip, whatever. It doesn't have to be the fanciest thing. We can go hiking. But sometimes that time really does matter, right? And make sure that whatever position you may hold with regard to who's the breadwinner and who's not, you guys are making that time for each other to really connect on those multiple levels. I mean, I think that this is for guys and girls. At whatever speed you need to take it, you should find a love that in which you can inspire and be inspired, that you can support and feel supported, and love and be loved. And that's it. Have them meet you on your level.
Thank you. Swale?
I'll say this from my own experience, and I've watched it for like a long period of time, and I feel like women have this societal pressure to have to find a mate at a certain time, and then the storyline and this fairy tale, and it's a tough pressure to have. And then a lot of times for men, going back to the whole, like, why are we rushing? Because women tend to work on a timeline that we don't, that pressure doesn't exist for us. And it's a challenge because, and I'm saying this as humbly as possible, every woman that I've ever interacted with professed her love to me. And I didn't know how to receive it because, for me, love is patience, right? It's a long, drawn process for me. So when I heard that, it meant nothing to me because I never had a problem with people loving me. My problem was finding somebody that I was patient enough to love back. And I couldn't deal with the timeline of the pressures that happen to women. And I will never understand it because, again, I've never had to deal with it. But being self-aware, and if I was able to give a woman advice, and I'm doing this just because you asked, because I wouldn't generally do this in public, is self-awareness, and then the fact that understand that, are you doing this because it's something you really want to do in this moment, or all these external pressures are kind of forcing you to kind of force this issue? Because I've seen many of relationships end not because the two people aren't in love or aren't compatible, it's because there's a timeline, and if you don't marry me, I'm going to the next person that does. And sometimes that next person isn't the best person, it's just the person that's willing to get married today. And we've compromised our happiness and our love for what society forces upon us. And I hate seeing it because people are married just to say that they're married and they're not in love.
All right. So, thank you, fellas, for your vulnerability, for your candidness, and for your willingness to sit in front of a room, mainly full of women, to, keep it real, keep it all the way funky. But, I think for the fellas who are in the audience, I hope that you learned a lot. Ladies, I hope that you picked up on a lot as well, because gender wars is brewing. A gender war is brewing, right, which is the purpose of hosting this event. It was to put a stop to the gender war that is brewing, right? Because we all have a responsibility, right, to do so, right? Because there are men in our lives that we care about, there are women in our lives that we really care about, and we need to make sure that when we pick up on the nonsense or when we see something is not tasteful, if you will, we need to make sure that we put an end to it and that we nip it in the bud. And I think today with the women's panel, the males panel, we have walked away with some key strategies and tips that we can bring back home. So I encourage you guys to talk about this with your partners, to talk about this with your friends, about what you learned here today, and encourage them to get on a stage and talk vulnerably about what it is that they're experiencing. And fellas, I really appreciate you, because a lot of ladies out here, we also are trying to figure out where's our space, like where do we fit into this dynamic of how you guys are trying to manage how you fit into our dynamic. And so it's really important for the conversation to be fluid and happen on both sides. So I want to say thank you so much.